Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where we combine alcohol and horror movies for your entertainment.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
Be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Today we are making a drinking game for Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright, who also directed other movies such as Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Hot Fuzz, and Baby Driver. The movie was written by Wright and Christy Wilson Cairns, who was also the writer for the movie 1917.
Last Night in Soho follows around Eloise as she moves into London to pursue her dream of becoming a fashion designer. She finds that London is not as glamorous as she once thought, as people such as her new roommate are horrible company. She moves out into a private space that she is renting from an older lady, and when she goes to sleep, she seemingly goes back in time to Soho in the 1960s, following around a young woman named Sandy. Like Eloise, Sandy also learns that London is not everything she ever dreamed of, as there are people in the city that can turn dreams into nightmares.
Just a bit of a forewarning, the drinking rules do have mild spoilers, but nothing that will really take you out of the movie if this is your first time watching Last Night in Soho. Now, on to the drinking rules.
So of course, the first rule for any of our drinking games is death, and this movie gave us 11 sips in total.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit more than average. A few were off screen, but that's rather fine.
Yeah, some of them being off screen, like we still counted them, especially if they were notable characters or something. It's definitely worth including, and yeah, definitely more than average for one of our drinking games, and it kind of surprised me based on the type of movie that this is, I guess.
For sure. Now moving on to the next rule is whenever somebody screams, cries, or yells, you take a sip. And this came to a total of 15 sips.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit lower than average for our drinking games. For screams, cries, and yells, it's still a decent number. It's double digits.
Yep.
Gives you a good amount of sips. But overall, it's a little bit on the lower end of average, I would say. High teens is probably average. But yeah, decent enough rule. Anyways, moving on to rule number 3, it's whenever somebody drinks, and this gave us 10 sips.
Yes. Speaking of drinks, one that was mentioned a lot in the movie was Vespers, the drink that Tucker's drinking right now.
Yep. If you want to know how to make it, or even the drink that Alex is having there, the Shandy, you can watch our previous video that we just released on Monday, teaching you guys how to make them. So go check that out after you finish watching this video.
However, let's move on to the next rule, which is whenever somebody makes an advance on another person, which came to a total of 14 sips.
Yeah. I think this happens mostly to Sandy, but there's one scene in particular where it's like kind of a montage almost, where it's a bunch of guys commenting about how she has a lovely name or whatever, and they're clearly making advances on her. I think that was the only scene where that rule was mercied.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I feel like with the context of the movie, it's supposed to be an advance.
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That those people are definitely advancing on her. Now let's move on to rule number 5. It's when Ellie's mom is seen or mentioned, and this again gave us 10 sips.
So Ellie's mom is the main motivation. She does go to art school, so I guess she is an integral part of the story in that regard. However, let's move on to the next rule, which is rule number 6, whenever the shadow people are seen.
Yeah, and this gave us 8 sips. We won't go into too much detail with this one. Like, I think it happens later in the movie. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, again, could be more spoilers, so we don't really want to hit on it too much.
Exactly. So yeah, let's move on to rule number 7, which is whenever Ellie wakes up, and this gave us 9 sips.
Yeah, this is generally how the dreams stop, so it's more or less just like the dream's ending as opposed to Ellie just waking up randomly, so it usually has a meaning behind it. Moving on to rule number 8, whenever fashion design is being done, modeled, or talked about, this counts for a sip. And we had a total of 12 sips for that rule in the movie.
Yeah, it's the main reason why Ellie moved to London in the first place, following in her mom's footsteps. And also, Sandy kind of inspires the dress that she's designing. So we felt like it was an important part of the movie. It's kind of what Ellie's dreams are, like her ambitions, I should say.
Yeah.
And yeah, we felt it was important for that reason. But anyways, we'll move on to the second last rule of this drinking game. It's whenever the old man is seen, and this gave us 9 sips.
Yeah. Again, don't want to talk about him too much because again, that'll lead to some spoilers.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the last rule. The last rule is whenever you see Sandy and Ellie at the same time, which came to a total of 15 sips for this drinking game.
Yeah, it happens quite a bit, a good 15 times. There's a lot of scenes that have great choreography involving both of them.
Mm-hmm.
We won't go into any specific scenes. We'll let you guys experience it for yourselves without spoilers, I guess.
Yeah.
We will go into it a little bit further on our podcast on Friday, but yeah, we'll just wrap it up there for that rule.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of wrapping things up, that wraps up all the rules for this drinking game. The total number of sips that we got from it is 113, which is basically equivalent to 4 drinks based on our 30 sip per can scale.
Yeah, I guess without further ado, drinking game 4 cans is pretty standard, I'd say.
I'd say in between 3 and 4 is average for our
Average,
drinking.
I'd say pretty good. When she does go to 60 Soho, it usually is more drinks with advances, seeing people drinking, Ellie waking up, seeing Sandy and Ellie at the same time, are just some examples.
Yeah, like, I think that's when it ramps up a little bit. There are rules that allow you to keep drinking outside of Soho, which I think we did a good job of balancing both in real life and in Soho in the 60s, giving you rules for each part of it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a little bit more when it is Soho.
For sure. So if you're looking for an average drinking game to play on our channel, this is probably it. It's that very perfect line between 3 and 4 drinks, and it won't get you too messed up, which is great.
But it'll give you a nice little buzz.
But it will definitely give you a nice little buzz.
Yeah.
And with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our episode on Last Night in Soho for this drinking game. If you ended up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback or suggestions, let us know in the comments below.
Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next episode on Friday, where we're going to have an episode of our Bottom Shelf Horror podcast, where we're going to go more in-depth talking about Last Night in Soho and talk about the production, talk about the plot and what our opinions are on it. But anyways, for now, thanks for tuning in. This is us saying cheers to fears.